How about Mike McCarthy? Mike McCarthy is keeping his job in Dallas, and I know a lot of people feel certain ways about that. And Zach, I think we talked about this before. If you're a Dallas fan, there's a reason why you might be demoralized that Mike McCarthy is coming back.
Yeah, I mean, you see over the past few years, he's been there 3 years. I understand he has 36 wins in the regular season, but the Cowboys at this point in their history and over the past 10 years, all they've been is get to the playoffs and get eliminated early on. So I get why he is brought back. He's had a fantastic regular season all 3 years, but I don't think after what happened against the Packers, that embarrassing game, I truly thought something had to change. I thought whether it was Dak or Mike McCarthy, it looks like both are going to return. I thought something just had to change to switch up the way that the momentum for that organization was going, get some fresh blood in there, get something that can really take you guys to the next level next year and be a difference maker. And it looks like they're just running it back and going to try to fix things in the interim, put Band-Aids on certain positions here and there. But I do see why Cowboy fans would be concerned about this.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest part is arguably that was the most embarrassing loss the Cowboys have had at home, given the circumstances. You're finally the number 2 seed. There was actually a clear path, right, to the NFC Championship game. Not that it's an easy road in the playoffs. We've seen it. You got to go out there and compete. Somebody gets hot, and that's just the way it works. But for the Cowboys' sake, you had a Packers team, even though Jordan Love's been playing great. We're going to talk about Jordan Love in the future. But Jordan Love, first season as an NFL starter. You're at home. You haven't lost a home game in your last 16 contests in Dallas. And then not only did you get beat, it was non-competitive. The game was over at halftime, and the score doesn't reflect how much of a blowout it was. But Kevin, on the flip side, because let's not say it's devil's advocate, but let's look at the other side. People are very emotional about Mike McCarthy coming back. But also, in some cases, Mike McCarthy has done a lot of good things. And as we talked about, winning is extremely hard in the NFL.
Yeah, and he has done good things. And I think when you're talking about Dallas, in the NFL, the playoffs are one and done. So you're not allowed to have a bad game. And while I think that, again, something has to change in Dallas, there are quality head coach candidates out there. But I guess what they believe in is that they have this setup there. Zach said, put a couple Band-Aids on a position here or there, add a weapon or two for Dak and get that defense right. But is it pushing what's inevitable down the line is, I think, the question that Dallas fans have right now. Because what if in 2024 it doesn't work out? Well, if we thought he couldn't survive this, he is not going to survive in 2024 after that. And I think at that point, the conversation about Dak has to happen too, because he's a free agent after this next year. So for me,
he can't be franchise tagged.
That's right.
Is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah.
Because remember that whole thing, it took years and years and years, and it was franchise tag in that deal. The part of it is he can't be franchise tagged again. So they're going to have to make a decision. They're going to be forced to make a decision on Dak. I mean, McCarthy, you're right. The regular season record is there, but you don't play in the NFL to win regular season games. You play in the playoffs to win. It was an embarrassing loss for them. Maybe they believe they can do it again. I mean, obviously they do. And there were questions about Bill Belichick and whether, if they get rid of McCarthy, would he go to Dallas and the whole Jerry Jones thing? But maybe Bill didn't want to go there. And maybe, Jerry and him had that conversation. This is speculative, honestly. I don't know. But
maybe they had another sleepover. Isn't that what happened when they originally signed Mike McCarthy, as he went over to Jerry Jones's house and they had like a sleepeover?
Yeah, an adult sleepover, I think is what happened. Well,
no, I'm not.
Is that true? I don't know.
No, that was because it was like day 2 and he hadn't left it's a mansion. It's not like they were sharing a bedroom. He probably were like 100 of feet. But yeah, no, apparently he spent the night and then they got the deal done.
Yeah, and the Dak conversation is going to be something that's going to go on for months and months, and even going into the next season. That's not going to change, obviously. But Brad, I think you have stats here because we're talking about coaches here. And let's stay away from the Dak conversation right now, because that's, again, we could talk about it for a while. But coaching wise, Mike McCarthy, if you actually look at his record compared to some of the other prominent NFL head coaches, Brad, there's a reason for him to stay and still be a head coach in the NFL.
Yeah, that's right. So Tone Dix from the Pat McAfee show actually shared this, and I thought this was absolutely insane. John Harbaugh, you can see his record, Mike Tomlin, Mike McCarthy's right there with him, and Sean Payton as well. All of them have very similar playoff records. John Harbaugh having the best out of these 4. and then they all have Super Bowl rings. So, it just kind of goes to show how hard it is to win and how hard it is to get to the playoffs and not only get there, but also win while you're in the playoffs and then hope that you get to a Super Bowl. I think that, Dallas has a lot of talent and I think they've done really well. But as I've said all year, they've played soft teams. When we talked about the Ravens this year and how many teams they beat with a winning record, I believe Dallas actually has a losing record against winning teams if you include the Packers this season. So there is definitely some cause for concern, but I don't think it's all on Mike McCarthy. I think that, in my opinion, and I've been saying this all year, it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, but I think that Dak is the problem. I think I really do. Every time we put Dak into a big game, he does not do well. He does not perform well. You can't win ball games when you're turning the ball over and throwing pick sixes. You just can't do it. And so I actually put a poll up in our YouTube chat right now. If not Dak, then who will be the next QB for Dallas next year? Let's just say they released him a year early. Russell Wilson is taking the lead right now. And then I also have Trey Lance. And hey, you know what? Maybe they bring back Kurt Warner and he goes on a crazy run. I also put Joe Flacco in there as well. And so I don't know.
This was the first thing I looked up that popped up when I looked at Mike McCarthy's slumber party.
That's nightmare fuel.
I had to look it up, but yeah.
And there it is.
Yeah.
But for Rock, though, I hear you, Brad. The one thing I do want to point out with this, and Dak, that narrative, just like another quarterback has a narrative in Baltimore here until he wins a quote unquote big game. Still, Lamar's going to be a 2-time MVP. We'll dive into that. But Rock, this wasn't all on Dak. It wasn't a great game. At one point, the Cowboys defense had allowed 9 yards per play from scrimmage. 9 yards from scrimmage at one point in the game. And that was not early on. This was second, third quarter where the Packers could do whatever they want. But something's going to have to change, Rock. It's good that Mike McCarthy has some stability, but no situation, I think you mentioned this before, no situation has more pressure than playing really in Dallas.
Yeah, it's to be the quarterback of that football team, the team everyone refers to as America's team. The spotlight's on. Everyone is always preying on the Cowboys' downfall. I think that's the consensus across the league. Just fans hate the Cowboys, except Cowboys fans. Like, I don't think I've ever met someone who's like, yeah, I'm a fan of another team, but I like the Cowboys. I'm sure there are people out there. I'm just saying, it's like they're one of the most hated teams and most hated franchises in all of sports. It's just the way it is. So to be the quarterback of that team, the spotlight's already on. And we talked about Zach and I think we were the only two left on that show, just talking about the game. And I didn't think the loss was solely on Dak Prescott. Now, Brad may disagree. A lot of Cowboys fans seem to disagree as well. I thought the defense kind of laid a goose egg as well out there, and they didn't play up to their standard. But Dak and Mike McCarthy, those are the two that everyone is going to look at and say, all right, Mike McCarthy's gone 12-5, 12-5, 12-5, but he only has a 1-3 postseason record with the Dallas Cowboys to really show for it. Dak, same thing, basically. I mean, if you're not going to change this up or change something up going forward, you're not going to change up at the head coaching position. Obviously, you've already committed to Mike McCarthy. So if you're not going to change up at the quarterback position, what's the deal? Are you going to try to add more pieces and hope for the best and maybe expect the worst going forward? If you're Cowboys fans, like, something's got to change in Dallas. I really don't know if it's Dak or it's something else, but if watch them commit to Dak as well and just nothing change. And we're having this conversation again next year, because I really feel like that's the direction it's trending towards. I don't know if they part ways with him. If they do, we'll see what happens from there.
I have a quick question. Are we about to, because we just talked about how they're going to have to make some changes here and there, are we about to see the 5th, 6th straight season where Brandon Cooks is traded?
Maybe.
I really, if he gets moved on from, if they have to cap casual, whatever it is, I think this will be, the 5th straight year he's on a different team, which
he's a good player.
He's a good player, and he's only like 28, like about to turn 29. But you think he's like 35 the way that every year he's on a different team. And he always produces.
At this point, do you just like rent? You just rent everywhere?
Yeah, no, you don't. You don't buy. He's learned his lesson.
Probably have your one house, like your one big house, and then you just probably rent everywhere you go. Like
you're living out of a suitcase at that point. Like, you're going one city to another city.
He might just get hotels. because he's been traded mid-season. I'm pretty sure he
Just
just
like
I don't-
extended stays. I doubt he does that, Zach.
We
but-
we can have a full
He's an NFL
conversation
player
on the
now.
business behind professional sports, and in each sport, it's kind of wild to hear the stories. But no doubt about that Brandon Cooks has dealt with it more than anybody. This comment right here: Quinn changing schemes against the Packers is a disaster class, and this was
100%.
that was a big issue. And again, that's why I'm not putting this all on Dak. Dak did not play well enough for them to win the game, but the Cowboys defense gave them zero chance as well.
Yep.
It was a combination of just really the biggest letdown that I can imagine for Cowboys fans. And I know people are saying, well, the history of the Cowboys. Well, let's talk about history then. Over the last 28 years, since the Cowboys in 1995, if you're going to consider 1996 them winning the Super Bowl, whatever you're going to consider it, there are 6 teams that haven't gone to a conference championship, okay? The Browns and the Lions, which are still trying to get to the Super Bowl, the Dolphins, the Commanders, Texans, who are an expansion team, and then the Dallas Cowboys. That's not a list you want to be on. Now, Detroit can get to the conference championship with a win this weekend, but the moral of the story here, Dallas, until they get back to the conference championship, the pressure's on Dak, and the pressure's going to be on anybody that's running the Cowboys because it's been the same thing for almost 3 decades.